endless skies. Oh, I'm living that nomad life, city to city, feeling alive. From mountain tops to ocean drives, unchained, I thrive, I thrive.
Joining us here. Thank you so much for joining us here on Nomads 50 Plus. My name is Chris Kalabukas, and it's my current mission to interview 1,000 digital nomads. That's right, folks, 1,000 digital nomads, and to get an inkling of what it's like to get into the life of becoming a digital nomad. And today we have a very special guest. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your travels to date?
Sure. So my name is Ophir Tal. I've been a digital nomad for 2 years now. Spent time in 10 countries by now. These countries have been Mauritius, Georgia, Serbia, Thailand, Singapore, Vietnam, Kenya, Rwanda, and now the 10th country, the Philippines. And I am a LinkedIn ghostwriter and coach. That's how I make a living, working remotely with founders and solopreneurs to help them grow on LinkedIn. I do it all from the laptop and my mobile phone, and that enables me every 2 to 3 months to basically move from one country to another. And I'm not doing it alone. I'm living with my girlfriend, who is also a copywriter and also a digital nomad.
Well, fantastic. So, how did you get into this in the first place? Have you always wanted to be wanted to travel when you were a kid? Did you travel with your parents? How did you decide you wanted to get into it in the first place?
Well, if we'll go all Freud about it, like tell me about your childhood kind of thing. If I need to pick really one point in time, I would pick the summer of 2017. On that summer, I made a huge trip to the United States. I basically visited, I think it was 11 states in total.
Wow. You are not a slow traveler by any means.
Not a slow traveler at all. It basically included, I call it the hyperbola trip, because it included the East Coast, then the South, then the West Coast. It was this like hyperbola or parabola, but going from right to left, from East to West. And it was really intense. You know, I took Greyhounds all over the United States and, you know, slept in like hostels and stuff and met people from all over the world. And it gave me this sense of agency and independence. I think it was the point that made me, you know, fall in love with traveling and with trips, and also with the notion of living abroad, because back then I lived in Israel, in Jerusalem, and I thought of getting out in one way or another. And eventually I did. In 2018, I actually moved to New York and lived there for 2 years. So that experience was also life-changing, because I was literally in the East Village in Manhattan, like the heart of Manhattan, living there for 2 years, working in the Jewish community there specifically. And that gave me a sense of how the life that I had in Israel is only one type of lifestyle that you can have, and that, you know, New York City offers something very different. And during that time, I met who is now my girlfriend, and she is the one who introduced me to the notion of digital nomadism back in 2020. When we were a year together. She told me that her dream has been back then to become a digital nomad, and I had no idea what she's talking about. I've never met a digital nomad in my life.
Nice. Well, must have been a very hard time.
Spiritual guru thing.
Must have been a very hard time to be a digital nomad in 2020 with COVID and all the lockdowns happening.
Ironically speaking, COVID made me realize it's feasible, because up until then, I worked in the world of NGOs, which is very, you know, office-based, location-based, very traditional. And I didn't have the notion of like working remotely at all. I did write articles and blogs, and I was a journalist before, but it wasn't remote in the nomad sense. You know, you still had like headquarters or stuff. You still had like physical meetings.
Oh yeah.
And
We all had
during
offices
COVID,
to go into. I remember the
everything.
days when we all had offices to go into.
Oh man, I don't miss these days at all. Like,
No.
not at all. Oh my God, no. And so, yeah, in COVID, basically everything turned into remote work, even things that I didn't think could become into remote work, webinars and, lectures and that kind of stuff that I did then with the Jewish community. And that made me realize that if I'm working remotely from New York City, doing, work for like the Jewish community there, maybe I could do something else remotely. Maybe I could also write remotely. And that notion was slowly developed and nurtured during the next 2 years. And basically, during those years, I realized that LinkedIn is a thing and that there is a potential there in terms of, marketing and, delivering work there for companies and founders. So I started this side hustle. And in 2023, I went all in. And the stars aligned only in 2024 because during that time, my girlfriend still worked in an office job. And when she found another job, her current job that is fully remote, then both of us were working remotely. And when that happened, then we became nomads. But the infrastructure of remote work for me was there long before that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so what businesses did you so you started a business online, or were you working for a company online when you first started?
I started my own business online, first as a side hustle because I was a marketing manager in an NGO during the same period of time. But the business was fully remote and I didn't even need to argue. Like, people really liked remote work. And
Mm.
founders in tech, especially, which is the main target audience that I've been working with, we didn't even need to talk about it. It was so clear to them that the work is being done remotely, regardless if the founder is in the United States, United Kingdom, or Israel. And that enabled me, long before I was a nomad, to actually make a living off a remote work setting.
Yeah, so you were already doing a location independent business before you decided to leave. So you were already able to work remotely from anywhere before you started.
I would say that this is also my practical advice to anyone listening, that if you can work remotely from, St. Louis, Missouri, or from Philly, you can work remotely from Chiang Mai in Thailand, or from, Da Nang in Vietnam. I think that too many people are confusing the more touristy part of nomadism with the actual thing that nourishes it. It's all about remote work eventually. And if you can sustain yourself through remote work in your home country, you can do so very easily abroad.
So would you say that you did a lot of work up front to have a cushion of money before you went, or you were just assuming that you were going to keep on working the entire time that you were traveling?
It's a combination of both. And I would say that the main source of funding for the travels has been my income, because it's eventually based on remote work. If it was just traveling and no work was involved, all of my setting would have been different, including the places that I chose to travel to.
Right. So when you do, I'm assuming you're finding it cheaper. Obviously, you're finding it cheaper outside of New York City, but in the places that you're going to, and I want to get into some of the places you went to, because it seems like you said you've been doing it 2 years, but you've been to 11 countries. That sounds like a really fast travel. Like, how much time do you spend in each one of those countries?
About 2 months, something like that.
Is there a reason why you only spend 2 months? Do you think, okay, I've done whatever I wanted to do here, and I want to move on to the next one, or is there a plan?
I think it's a combination of both, because sometimes I really have this plan of I want to go here and there. And when it's done, it's done. And sometimes I really like a country And then I don't want to get too attached.
Mm.
I don't want it to be harder to leave, emotionally speaking. So I limit myself to a certain period of time. And the good thing is that, if a certain nomad wants to get attached to a place, they could. There are digital nomad visas that allows you to do just that, basically, in Thailand and in Portugal and many other countries in the world. For me, it's not the time because I'm too curious. I want to move along. And when I'll feel that enough is enough, then I know that the DTV is possible in, say, Thailand, or, I don't really need a visa for Portugal because I'm also a Portuguese citizen, but, that's also an option for me.
So when you say you go for 2 months at a time, is that because that's how long the visa is, or is just that's how much time you typically spend before you realize it's time to move on?
Usually the visas are longer. For instance, in the country of Georgia, in the Caucasus Mountains, the visa was for a year.
Wow. But you didn't stay for a whole year.
And there I spent 4 months. No, 4 months. I could stay for a whole year. 4 months was a lot of time, and I've seen most of the country. But still, I wanted to go somewhere else. In Thailand, I spent 6 months, but not in a row, like in several times around those 2 years, because there were, certain parts of Thailand that I wanted to see. And it was more comfortable, doing the islands in like one shot and then the north part of Thailand in another. And there were countries that I felt really well with, only 2 months, because I felt that, I've seen what I need to see. And then there were countries that I didn't like that much, so I left earlier.
Right. So how do you decide where to go next? Do you have a plan in mind of where you're going to go in general, or do you just say, oh, I think this is interesting, let's go there next?
So it's a combination of several factors. For instance, I can tell you that after the Philippines, we're here until March. Here we're going to be for a longer period of time, because the Philippines is a fascinating country with so many islands. So we figured out it will be wiser to actually extend the visa, which eventually, of course, we did. After the Philippines, we'll go to Nepal. After Nepal, we'll go to Kazakhstan and then go visit our families in Israel. How did we plan this? So it's a combination of, like I said, several factors. Well, Wi-Fi is very important, obviously. So in Nepal, there is a specific place called Pokhara that is well known for being a digital nomad haven of like nomads who like the serenity of the mountains. So they like to work remotely from there. In Kazakhstan, also an emerging destination in Central Asia, Almaty is well known to be a very modern city and very accommodating. So we knew that Nepal and Kazakhstan could be a good destination. Both of them good destinations. Another factor is also relative closeness. We're now in the Philippines, so it doesn't make sense to go to Romania or to Brazil.
Right.
But like Nepal and Kazakhstan are relatively close. Like going to Nepal isn't that far. And then from Nepal to Kazakhstan isn't that far either. And then going from Kazakhstan to our home country is also like a very short flight. So, geographical proximity, that's another. Safety, personal safety, knowing that in Pokhara in the mountains, it's very serene, and Kazakhstan is one of the safest countries in the world. I would say that weather is also a factor. The thing with digital nomads, most of us are like sun chasers, always chasing the sun, always chasing,
Absolutely.
the bright weather.
Why wouldn't you be, right?
After a
If you
year,
can.
yeah, but after a year of living in a summer, like in summer conditions in, Thailand and Singapore and Vietnam and then Africa and now in the Philippines, I want a little bit of cold weather, more, we could say early winter vibes, not the late winter, but the early winter vibes, not too cold, not too warm. And so Nepal naturally provides that, and also Kazakhstan. And it's very seasonal, because if we would go earlier to Nepal, it would be colder. And if we would go to Kazakhstan, say now, it would be freezing.
So how do you do it? I mean, it seems to me that you're doing a lot of traveling, you're seeing a lot of things, and you're also working. When do you have time to sleep?
Well, I am sleeping because I have to, but if I wouldn't have to, I wouldn't sleep, because I'm too curious, basically. But it's really important to keep that balance. So for me, what I do is that I work 5 days a week and then I travel over the weekend.
Mm,
And for me specifically, I'm used to actually work on Sundays because Sunday in Israel is like Monday. And I don't work on Friday. So I don't work on Friday, I don't work on Saturday. And I would usually, it depends on the context, but sometimes you live in a city from which you can go to, tours or long weekends rather easily. For instance, in Thailand, you would just go to this like island hopping kind of thing from Phuket or Koh Samui, and you would be back in like 6 or 7 hours. In Georgia, it was very easy because there are a lot of tours that are coming out of like Tbilisi. In the Philippines, what I do, I take advantage of the time gap between the Philippines and the countries which I serve in work, which are the States and Israel primarily. And so I would say go on a Thursday, but I would go in a time in which they're not working, like at all. And I would schedule in advance all of the posts that I need to write or all of the tasks that I need to do because it's async. And that way I don't really need to work with them on a Thursday. And then, Friday is off, Saturday is off, and Sunday, I chose to work. So if I'm choosing not to work on a Sunday specifically for, a certain long weekend, that's also fine. And that's how I'm doing, the island hopping here in the Philippines. So it's a very delicate balance. And I see a lot of nomads kind of tipping either here or there. Some nomads are working too much. And, I've seen them in Chiang Mai working 14, 15 hours and lacking the energy to actually travel over the weekend. And on the other hand, I saw the influencers, the people who always travel, and then you wonder, when do they have time to work?
yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know how some people do it. So actually, that's interesting. You should mention that because I want to talk about time zones for a bit because I know I do the same kind of thing when I go to Greece and I work with U.S. companies. I work in the afternoon, so it's like four to midnight is my shift in Greece. So I have the entire morning to do all sorts of stuff. So we can do plenty. You could do a lot of things during the day, and then when 4 o'clock rolls around, I clock in, I start doing my work, and that's great for that. But what happens when you're where you are and you have clients in Israel and the States? You must have some clients that want to meet at 3 o'clock in the morning your time or something like that. How do you handle that? I mean, I know you were mentioning async earlier, but I'm assuming you have to have some face-to-face meetings or some Zoom calls or whatever.
Of course. Well, a good example would be this meeting. We are meeting in my 10 a.m. And if you recall, in the beginning, it wasn't the case. You had this schedule and it had all sorts of like weird hours. I think the most convenient one was like 8 a.m. But then we had a dialogue. And when we had a dialogue, you realize that you need to accommodate, and I had to accommodate as well. So here we are, 10 a.m., 10:22 actually right now. So this is also what happens with clients. And I would say that there is a difference between East Coast, West Coast, and Israel. Very different situation. So in Israel, because it's the same time zone as most of Europe, what I'm doing is I basically tell them, hey, let's meet at 2 p.m. of my time. And it's there 9 a.m. And a lot of founders like that because they say, all right, this guy, when I wake up or soon thereafter, he's already like ready to go. But
Right.
for me, it's 2 p.m. So it's not like I am this extremely hardworking guy. It's just that for me, it's really easy. So with Israel and Europe, it's easy because then I seem like this guy who is working really hard. With the United States, what I'm doing is that I'm working on the materials during the afternoon, and when they wake up, everything is ready. And then we meet, first thing on their morning as well. And then they think I'm really hardworking, when in fact it's my 9 p.m. or 8 p.m. or 10 p.m. And usually in a day where I meet someone, say at 10 p.m., I would do most of my work from, say, 4 or 5 p.m. of my time. So it's all about the balance.
So, and none of your clients have issues with you being not in the same time zone. They all know where you are. I mean, have you ever had to not tell them where you are, or have they never had an issue with that?
Not at all. I mean, I can't avoid that because on LinkedIn, I'm very transparent about my lifestyle, and also on Substack, telling where I am and also who I am, being a digital nomad. I could also tell you that it's a great icebreaker, because when they see someone who is actually traveling the world and working, they see someone who can handle himself properly, who is responsible, who can pursue dreams. And I think that it also tells them what I'm capable of doing for them with their LinkedIn profiles. And that's why I believe many of the founders I've been working with actually kind of like it.
So is that your main source of income, is writing for LinkedIn profiles, or what like you say I think you mentioned you're a ghostwriter earlier. Is that basically your main source of income?
Right. That and coaching on LinkedIn, yeah.
And it's mostly for startup founders on LinkedIn. And how do you find your clients?
Tech founders, startup founders. Sometimes there are like other like coaches or stuff that want me to coach them. Mostly it's tech founders. How do I find them? I either send them a DM or they come to me. Referrals in my network, combination of all.
Nice. This is fantastic. So are you a citizen of Israel?
Yes,
or
I am.
Okay, and
I'm a citizen
assuming
of Israel and Portugal.
I'm assuming you have to pay taxes on your money. So does that end up being an issue with you being overseas?
No, I mean, I'm registered in Israel. My business is there. And it's really hard to like detach, from a bureaucratic standpoint. You need to leave the country for like 5 years and then apply for, cutting not your citizenship, but your residency. And it takes a while. So I'm paying taxes to Israel. There is no issue there, unfortunately, because these are very high taxes. So
yeah, there's no way around that.
For the future,
you still have
what I'm planning for the future is just, cutting that residency and then paying taxes elsewhere where it's cheaper.
But you have to be a resident somewhere, I'm assuming. Like there's no such thing as a digital nomad who doesn't live anywhere. You got to be a resident or have a citizenship somewhere. So you have to pay taxes to some state. Maybe someday in the future there'll be this floating digital nomad visa where you can live anywhere in the world and not have to pay anybody taxes, but we're not there yet.
Maybe. Yeah, we're not there yet. But I have a second citizenship. I'm also a citizen of Portugal. So that is a big advantage.
So do you pay them tax too? Or if your business is in Israel, then you just pay Israeli taxes. That's it.
Yeah, there is like a tax covenant between Israel and Portugal. So if you pay taxes in Portugal, you don't pay them to Israel and vice versa. And, when the time will come to actually cut the residency, then I'll use my Portuguese citizenship and, choose the EU country that is like the least horrible with taxes,
Smart, very smart. So let's talk a little bit about healthcare. Have you ever had any issues with healthcare in your travels? Because I'm assuming, I'm in the States. I'm originally from Canada. These countries both have healthcare plans. Canada has comprehensive free healthcare. I don't know what it's like for you in Israel or what the countries you are living in, but do you find you're having any issues with healthcare or any incidents that happened that you want to talk about?
So first of all, Israel has wonderful healthcare. It's a really unique method where the citizen chooses the HMO and then the government subsidizes the company that the citizen chooses. So it's like inspired from Scandinavia in a way, and it's really efficient. So, I'm still eligible for that, obviously, but I'm not there, so I'm not using it. Abroad, I didn't have significant issues. I can tell you that when it comes to vaccines, some of the vaccines I took in Israel back in the day, and then there were other vaccines like dengue, and I think it was yellow fever. And that's when I realized that some countries are really good for, the vaccines in terms of the healthcare and their knowledge of these diseases, and some are not. And surprisingly, in like Thailand and Vietnam, countries that are labeled third world, their healthcare services are much better than European countries like Bulgaria or Serbia. In Vietnam and Thailand, I got these vaccines. I got amazing service, like VIP service for really a dime. And it really saved me a lot of trouble. So in that sense, I would say that you could trust on healthcare services in like the big cities of these countries. I was sick 2 weeks ago, but it's not something that could not happen in, New York, for instance. It was a bit nasty, but not something unusual. I took a pill and then it was over. And here in the Philippines, we have like a pharmacy inside the compound that we live in, and it's not hard to get medicines. So healthcare was really easy. And in terms of insurance, this is actually a practical advice. I think that digital nomads should choose an insurance company that knows what digital nomadism is and that understands it. I know that internationally speaking, there are two, Genki and Safety Wing, both are great. And I was once insured in an Israeli company that, while it said that it understood digital nomads, it actually required them to call with the local phone, to them to get an approval and chase them. And I didn't like that at all. I mean, I don't even have an access to my original phone number, not in the, sense of like making calls. I do have it through WhatsApp, but not through other means. And, you would expect that a company that understands digital nomads would get that. They didn't. So when that happened, I made my research, and then I realized there is Safety Wing and Genki. And then, with a press of a button through an app or online, you can just, subscribe to their healthcare, and then you have the healthcare coverage that you need. So for nomads, for new nomads, I would say go for like digital service for insurance companies that understand you're digital, that you have access to your email, not necessarily to your phone.
That begs another question. What about banking? Do you use any kind of Revolut or Wise or any of those other digital nomad banks?
Yeah, Revolut. Yeah, I have a Revolut. And I also have Wise. Wise is more for business because I also open an LLC in the States. So I have Wise there. But yeah, Revolut. Banks in Israel are also great because the cards are international, and one of them is actually adjusted to like traveling abroad. It has like 0 foreign exchange fee. But other than that, Revolut has been great.
Cool. And you were mentioning earlier something about safety, so keeping up with the health and wellness sort of thing. I mean, have you had an incident or something like that you have to concern yourself with, or is it something that you just generally think that you need to look at?
There is a story there. There is absolutely a story there. It happened in Kenya. So we were advised, me and my girlfriend, when we lived in Nairobi in Kenya, not to walk in the streets when it's dark. And I thought, what the heck? Nairobi seemed safe, seemed half modern. It seemed less dangerous than places I know in my own country, Israel, the country with wars. So I was like, what's the worst that can happen?
Right.
And this one day we chose to walk from a co-working in Nairobi to a nearby sushi place, literally a 5-minute walk in a straight line. And so we walked. It was dark. And all of a sudden, a guy with a motorcycle came along, snatched the phone out of the hands of my girlfriend, tried to steal it.
Jeez.
She struggled to keep her phone, and her phone fell on the road and actually got rolled over the road. And then another Kenyan guy came along, stopped all the traffic, jumped to the road, and gave her her phone. So we were fine, and the phone, we got it fixed. It wasn't stolen, but it was very scary.
Yeah, I can imagine. Wow. And that's like just like in a 5-minute walk. So you can probably like from that point on, you're like, okay, now I'm really careful from where I go.
Yeah. And in the building where we lived, we had armed guards with like weapons,
Holy cow.
with rifles.
Yikes.
Yeah. And fences, like electric fences and walls. It felt like a prison. I mean, it was
Holy
a
cow.
very lavish prison, obviously.
Why did you want to go to Kenya?
know?
Did you always want to go to Kenya, or was there a reason why you were there?
Yeah. We wanted to see the safari, and we thought it would be very cool to try something different, to go outside of the usual digital nomad countries, the whole Thailand, Vietnam route.
Yeah.
And try something else. And so we did have fun there, but safety was a concern, because in all of the other places, I had no issue walking down the street, whether it was in Thailand or Bulgaria or Georgia or even Mauritius, that is also officially in Africa. We had no issue with that. And all of a sudden, something that I perceive as basic, the ability to just walk at night for like 5 minutes. It's not even night, it was like 8 p.m. And suddenly it's unsafe and you cannot do that.
Yeah. Well, the same thing would have happened in San Francisco, I'm sure. So don't. It's not a Nairobi thing. But it's interesting you've mentioned Mauritius, because you mentioned Mauritius before, and Mauritius is a place I always wanted to go. What's that like?
Heaven on earth.
Really? It's kind of remote, isn't it? It's like in the middle of nowhere down there.
It's east of Madagascar. You cannot even see that on the map. You need to really zoom in.
It's a very tiny. It's a tiny little dot on the map.
It's a tiny little dot. I think it takes like 3 hours drive from like one edge of the island to another. Because we've seen it all. We've seen all of Mauritius. It was very easy for us in 3 months' time to do so. It was our first country as digital nomads for very unique reasons, because we were looking for like a tropical heaven that is close in the time zone to Israel, because back then my girlfriend was only allowed to work in the time zone that is close to Israel, with a mild weather, not too hot, not too cold, and safe and good Wi-Fi. And then we had to like exclude many options, and the only option that remained was Mauritius. And that's how we chose it as the first destination.
Wow, because I remember I was in London for an event at one point, and I met somebody from Mauritius, and she was telling me all about it, and I said it sounds amazing, but then when I looked at the flights to get there, it's like it seems like it's so far away from everywhere. But it is a really nice place.
Yeah, the only way to get there is to fly to South Africa first and then go to Mauritius. So it's pretty far off, but it's an amazing country. Mellow, multicultural, and it works. It works well. You feel this like combination of the Hindu culture with the French culture, with the Creole culture. The beaches are remarkable. These are, Thailand level beaches, but without the influencers.
Because it's too far away. I want to go there.
Because it's too far away. Yeah, so you actually get most of the beach for yourself, and wonderful marine life, and dolphins and sea turtles and all of that. It's simply remarkable. It's really, I don't want nomads to go there and ruin it for me.
Okay, everybody, whoever's listening, do not go to Mauritius, no matter what. It doesn't matter it's not really all that great, right?
No, don't go there. Yeah.
So of all the places that you've been, like which one did you like the best and why?
If I need to choose, it would be Thailand.
Mm.
No doubt about it. For several reasons. First of all, there is a variety of things that you can do. You can go swimming and hiking and go to clubs and a lot of history to explore, amazing food, a wonderful scene of expats in Bangkok, of digital nomads in Chiang Mai, of spiritual hippies in Koh Phangan, really wonderful people that I've met there. So it just feels so abundant. You can really do everything. And it's never boring. It's never boring. It's very safe. It is still cheap, despite what some people say. It is still very affordable in Western standards. And it's just pleasant. The locals are so polite, but not in the, cold, passive aggressive way.
Mm.
They genuinely believe in politeness. And I felt very welcome there. And that's why I've spent 6 months there in total.
Wow. And anywhere specifically, particularly in Thailand, would you recommend above other places or just those 3 places you mentioned?
So it really depends on what the person likes. If someone says, I want modern amenities no matter what, Bangkok is your answer, because you have amazing co-working spaces, wonderful restaurants, amazing nightlife, really one of the best nightlifes ever with the nightclubs there and the markets and everything. And also it's good for networking, with expats. So if that matters to someone, Bangkok. If someone tells me, no, I actually want a serene life on the beach and still do remote work, I would definitely recommend Koh Phangan. Absolutely, because it has the best of both worlds. And if someone says, look, I want to be in the mountains, then one option is really Chiang Mai, which is really like a mecca of digital nomads. And another option is Pai, even though Pai, I spent time there in a long weekend, not for work, and I enjoyed it regardless. But Chiang Mai, I would say, is the best if you want to meet the most nomads.
Mm. And I mean, it sounds like you haven't learned any of the languages that these places have. You're able to get by with English just fine?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There was one country in which English didn't help. Russian did, and my girlfriend is Russian. So
well, that's lucky. That's Georgia?
That's Georgia, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm like, you're going to all these countries, and I'm like, from my perspective, it's like I don't know any of these languages, especially Thai. I hear Thai is very difficult to speak. So, but everyone knows English. Like you can get yourself people who understand you, so you're able to get by with English.
Pretty easily, and if they don't understand English, they'll go out of their way to help you, because again, they're very polite. In Vietnam, they'll just talk with you through Google Translate, which is very funny. They'll write, and then this Siri kind of thing will say, oh yeah, this is hilarious, when you speak with them. Yeah. And, Kenya and Rwanda are English-speaking countries, obviously. Mauritius was under a British rule, so they're also English-speaking, even though French culture is more dominant there, but they're still English-speaking. Singapore, obviously, proficient in English. And even in Eastern Europe, you'd be surprised to see that in Eastern Europe, they're more, controlling of the language rather than in Georgia. The only place that was problematic was Georgia. And, Well, I have a Russian girlfriend, so I was pretty lucky there.
You're lucky there. That's good. That's good. So let's talk a little bit about tools and technologies. So are there anything that you use like on a regular basis that you wouldn't be able to do without, like those kind of things?
Of course, one of them is Calendly. We spoke earlier about meetings.
Mm,
So when I want to schedule either meetings with my existing clients or with potential clients, I send them Calendly with all of the available hours, and I make sure that it actually fits my time zone. And then they can choose something that works for them. And if it doesn't, then we have a dialogue, but mostly they just choose and it's just fine. So this is in one example of a tool that is really a fit for remote work, especially with, different time zones. Obviously LinkedIn, because that's my bread and butter. Substack, that's where you and I met.
yeah.
So absolutely.
So
And well, when it comes to like payments, Stripe, PayPal Business for like international transfers, absolutely.
so what's your process for when you're bringing a client on board? Do you have multiple phone call or meetings with them, or do you have like one meeting and then you go off and do some work and then you have another meeting at the end? I mean, I guess how often do you need to interact with your clients?
So let's say that someone books a call with me because they're interested in learning more, about my services. So we have the call. I understand their needs, their circumstances, and according to which I offer a preliminary way of working together, which is like a 1 hour session in which I review their LinkedIn profile with them. And I basically build their LinkedIn strategy for content, for DMs, for the profile copy. 1 hour, $150, straightforward, no commitment. And then I send them the strategy that I wrote, and then they can choose, okay, I want Ophir to write for me, or I want Ophir to write with me to train me how to do this. And then they pay for either a coaching retainer or a ghostwriting retainer. They pay for 3 months, and then we basically through Calendly schedule our weekly session of like interviews or coaching sessions, depends on the retainer that they chose. And other than that, if they need to like ask me a question beyond the call, they can reach me out on like Slack, WhatsApp. I always answer in 24 hours, and that's the way I roll.
Have you had any issues where the technology has failed you? Like any times when you're doing like a webinar or something like that where things just fall apart, and how did you deal with that?
So I never had an issue like that, when I had to like run a webinar and then the internet fell off. I did have an issue in Kenya, not in Nairobi, but in Mombasa with the internet. And then what I would do is just do calls from my phone, because the internet on my phone on the eSIM was like stronger, more powerful than the one in my laptop. And ironically, it actually worked in my favor. Like people felt that it's less formal. And it actually, boosted conversion because people felt like they're talking with a friend, and they felt more inclined to work with me, even though the phone was like held like this and I had the earphones and I was talking with them, and they saw this like weird jungle, whatever, behind me. But they actually liked it. It felt very natural. So sometimes, and this is also a very important lesson about digital nomadism, if you run a business as a digital nomad, you can choose who you work with, and you basically champion being a nomad. You don't hide it. And then the people who will work with you either be neutral about it or very positive about it. That's why I believe that the best way of being a nomad is actually working for yourself, not for somebody else.
Right. And then you can use that. That's part of your feature. It's not a bug, it's a feature, right? Is being a digital nomad, because you have all this varied experience doing various things. So where are you going next? What's on your plans to go next? Because you're in the Philippines now, you're going to be there for a while. Where are you going next? What's next on your list?
So first of all, in the Philippines, you have a lot of variety. So in the Philippines, I'm now in Manila, the capital of the Philippines. After Manila, I'm going to the island of Siargao, which is basically a half digital nomad, half surfer island.
Do you surf? Are you a surfer?
Nope, nope. I'll learn. I know how to swim, obviously, never surfed. And I think it's a good opportunity for me to actually learn how to surf. And the Nomads are there. There's also a Corgi cafe there. So I really want to check it out. And yeah, after Siargao and after I'll finish my time here in the Philippines, I'm going to Nepal, to Pokhara. I believe it's in the northern part of Nepal, closer to the Himalaya mountains. You have a lot of digital nomads there. And from what I've heard, it's quieter than Kathmandu.
Mm. And then, so how do you know where all these digital nomads are? Where do you find them all? Like, are you part of some groups, or how do you know where everyone's gathering?
So there is Nomad List, and they recommend on specific places, and you can also meet people through that app. I think they've changed their name. I think now it's called nomads.com. It used to be called Nomads List. But beyond that, there are well-known co-workings and co-livings. This is very important. For some digital nomads, the best solution would be to live where they work and work where they live.
Mm.
And, Ice Cube saying, don't get high on your own supply, but sometimes it's a good idea,
So is that what you do? Do you stay in co-living places? Or like, we never talked about where you stay. I mean, do you just find an apartment and live there, or Airbnb, or how do you do that?
Sometimes it's an Airbnb, sometimes it's booking.com, sometimes it's like a local short-term rental, and sometimes it's a co-living. In Chiang Mai, I was in a co-living, and in Bulgaria, well, I didn't stay in a co-living, but I worked in a place that had a co-living in a very lively community, and that made me feel like I'm living there. And in Hoi An in Vietnam, I also lived in a co-living that also included a co-working. The good thing about it is that you have a community.
Mm.
You have a community, you have events, you make friends, you're never alone, and you also have world-class co-working. It is adjusted perfectly to your lifestyle. You don't need to figure out where you're going to work from. You know that you take literally 10 steps or 50 steps or 100 steps from your bed, and then you have the co-working, and from there, you're able to do deep focus work. So in these co-living spaces, you often hear about destinations because there is this network, this ecosystem of digital nomads, and usually they go to the same places for better or worse. Usually they would say that they go to Bansko in Bulgaria, Da Nang in Vietnam, Chiang Mai in Thailand, Bali. The good thing about it is that you can always meet the same people and new people in those places that are part of that ecosystem. The bad thing is that, if you're repeating the same places, what are you doing? Don't you want to explore?
You're not meeting anyone new, and you're not seeing anything new. You don't want to do that, right? That's part of the whole enjoyment of being that life.
Right. So for me, it's a combination of both. Sometimes when I want to feel more comfortable, say, I'm going to the ecosystem, to the places where I know I'll meet nomads, like Da Nang, like Chiang Mai, like Bansko. And sometimes I'm going to other destinations that are not part of that ecosystem necessarily, like the Philippines now.
Mm. So I was going to ask you, did you go to Nomad Fest last year in Bansko?
No, I haven't. And you know why? There is a very funny reason. I mean, I'm not sure if it's funny, but what I like about Bansko is that it's cold.
Mm.
It's cold. I like that. I like that it's cold over there, the snow, and it's cold, and you can breathe, you can actually breathe. This is something, in Southeast Asia, the air is like polluted in many places.
Mm.
And you cannot breathe properly in too many places here, other than maybe like Kopangan, it's a bit different. But You know what I mean? It's really an issue in Southeast Asia. And Bulgaria, what I liked so much about it, about Bansko, is that the air is so clean.
Mm.
It's so clean. And I like how I can just walk for hours in this little town, go up the hill and not sweat because it's so cold,
Yes.
And in the summer, it's not cold. So all of the advantages is lost, I mean, I like people, but I won't go all that wave to a fest when it's hot. Do it in the winter, So that's why I didn't go. Not
Yeah,
because
but
I don't like the people,
in the
but
winter, the hotel prices are triple or quadruple, right? Because that's why it's like I'm looking at the hotel prices
yeah,
and I'm like, wow, this is cheap. Why is
yeah,
it so cheap? It's in the middle of the summer.
right. But for me, some places are better for the summer and some are better for the winter. Like if you want to do something, do it right. If you want summer, go to the beach, go to where
Yes.
it's actually, fitting the weather, even though the months are a little bit different, like January in Thailand is summer, but like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you go to Koh Phangan or Phuket or Koh Samui in January, then you get the sun and the beach and the water and everything. You have what I call a summer ecosystem. But when you go to Eastern Europe for the summer, they're not really adjusted for that,
No. Yep, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Well, it's almost time to wrap up. So I want to ask you one last question is that if you had a piece of advice, so most of the people who are listening today are people who are aspiring to become digital nomads. So they're thinking about it, they want to get into the life, but they're still not sure that they want to get into it, even though everybody I've interviewed has been like super happy about the life. Like, what would be your one piece of advice you'd give somebody who's aspiring to become a digital nomad?
My number one advice would be not to get caught on the buzzword
Mm,
of digital nomad. It sounds big. It sounds bigger than life. But eventually, it's all about doing remote work, whether for yourself in your own business or for somebody else, living not in your original country and moving once in a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever you want. That is what it's about. So first of all, focus on the income. Once you have the income, the rest is settled.
so that's easy. You just focus on the income, but
Yeah,
you have to build a location independent business. You can't be working for a company that wants you to come into the office every day. It's got to be
of course not.
remote work. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I would say that if someone has a business, that's fine. If they still want to work for a company, they need to make sure that the company's policy is hiring remotely and that they're not doing you a gesture.
Mm,
So I would actually look for companies that anyway hire remotely, that anyway lack a physical business or a physical office. And then it's not like they're doing a gesture for you and tomorrow there's a new manager and they say, what the heck, what is this guy doing in Sri Lanka?
yeah. Yeah.
My girlfriend, for instance, she's working for a company that is fully remote. The CEO is, I don't know where he is. One of them is in Spain, the other, I don't know where he is even, They don't have a physical office. They don't want to work in an office. So when the CEO decides that, it's a done deal.
Yeah. It's got to be a
Another example,
fully remote company. Yeah.
yeah,
And there's
one of the
lots of them
CEOs that
now.
I ghostwrite for even
There's
like
tons
that.
of those out
Yep.
there, right? There's tons of those. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much. So one last question before we wrap up. Do you ever see yourself not doing this anymore? Like putting down roots somewhere and saying, okay, I want to stay in one place, or just this life is just too much fun for you?
Well, I do believe that there will come a time in the future where I'll say, okay, now I'm ready to settle. But settling isn't as dramatic as people think it is. You can settle for several years and then move along. You can take a break and then return to it. And as long as you're not owning the apartment, as long as you're, renting and it's a lifestyle choice, and then you can like invest in real estate, but you're actually renting the place you're living in, then you're truly location free because you can choose to, say, settle in Portugal for like several years and then go somewhere else.
Yeah, every decision is reversible. If you decide to stay somewhere for a
Right.
while, you can always get up and go later. It's like it's people think
Right,
when you make a
exactly.
decision, that's the decision you're going to stick with, and you don't have to. There's no need. This
Not
is
like
great.
that.
So this has been
It's
great.
not
Thank
like
you so
that.
much. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
So they can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Ophir Tal, Ophir. That's my first name. Tal, that's my last name. They can find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM there. And also on Substack, I have my newsletter, Freedom Through Branding. They can subscribe to it and then get my weekly emails about my life as a digital nomad.
Fantastic. So I will put all those links in the show notes below. So if somebody wants to go, they can go direct. So thank you so much. This has been great. Enjoy the Philippines. I've been to Manila once. Have you been to Cebu? I hear Cebu is really beautiful.
I'll also go there after Surigao.
But I love it. So enjoy yourself, and we'll talk again. Have a good one. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Oh, I'm living that nomad life, city to city, feeling alive. From mountain tops to ocean drives, unchained, I thrive, I thrive. Oh, I thrive.